Today on the show, we go on a hunt for answers. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and themes behind some of our favorite universes. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Chief Deputy Inspector Jaden.
Hello. So, episode 1 we've done. Now we're on episode 2. Episode 2 of ANDOR. I would say a lot of stuff happens in this episode. It felt fairly filler-esque, but it was good. I liked it.
Would you say filler or setup? Because I would say setup.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that.
Absolutely.
All right. So, like before, what we're going to do is we're going to do a brief synopsis coverage of the episode with some sprinkled fun lore and all that stuff and some analysis and stuff. And then we're going to go into more detail of how we feel about the episode as well as what we kind of hope to see in the future as the series progresses.
Yep. And this is episode 2. So if you haven't heard episode 0 or 1, please go back and listen to those and then come back so that you know what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah. What's Star Wars?
That's oh boy, we don't have a long time to unpack that one.
All right. Well, first we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We would love to hear from you guys, our listeners. So email us at podcast@loreparty.com. with your thoughts, questions, and anything you have going on with this episode or any other ones. You might be able to tell us something, and we might be able to talk about it. So email us.
And if you want to connect with us in person, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. You can find Kevin at In The Loop. That's IN_the_LUPE on Twitter. And K_LOOPZ on Twitch.
And you can find Mr. Jaden over here at Mr. Jadjay, Mr. JADJAY on Instagram and Twitter.
That's me.
And of course, you can connect with the Lore Party team on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at lore_party. So before we dive in, again, spoiler warning. If you haven't seen episode 1, don't listen to this episode. Come back, watch the episode, listen to our first episode, and then watch episode 2 and come listen to this episode. But seriously, we warned you, there's always spoilers going on here. And if you don't want to be spoiled, take your time. Don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere.
All right, now that we've officially warned you, let's get into it. So, we open up with the tribe of kids from the first episode, including a young Cassian, making their way towards the crashed ship. And on their way, we see an old gorge or quarry with old mining equipment. And young Cassian's like looking over it, and he seems to like, it brings up like a weird emotion for him, like it's familiar but not at the same time. And then he realizes he's getting left behind, so he runs off. And then that's when we cut to the present, where we see a man walking up some stairs, and he grabs a massive pair of hammers, and he starts to set up for like a rhythmic a bell routine. And it's a really awesome sequence because he starts pounding on it like he's pounding on a forge. It kind of gave me like blacksmith vibes, but it was making art. It was really cool.
Was the metal of that, did it look familiar to you?
I do not. I know where you're going with this. I don't think it's Beskar. That would be a real big waste of Beskar to make it a giant bell.
I agree. I really thought it looked like Beskar. I was like, oh shit.
That would have gotten... Listen, if that planet's reputation does precede it, that shit would have gotten stolen like last week. The week after it was installed, it would have been nicked.
Okay, so now night has fallen, and all the characters that we saw in episode 1, they're all going home. It's the end of the day. I guess that bell that we heard in the beginning of episode 1 is actually this guy, Hammerman, and he's just, banging away, and everybody's just getting ready to go home. So all of a sudden, we see Bix, and Bix sees a message while she's closing up the shop, and she sees this message on a console, and she looks really concerned. And obviously, it's the message that Karn sent out at the end of episode 1. And so Tim walks in, and he's just like, what's going on? And she doesn't say anything, just kind of looks down and then looks up and goes, nothing, just tired. And he asks her, hey, you want to hang out tonight and everything? And she's like, maybe tomorrow. Let's hang out tomorrow. And he's like, all right, sounds good. Fine, whatever. Sounds like a date. He asks her to close the back of the shop up and he'll handle the rest. So as she leaves, Tim runs to the console. Literally, he just runs fairly quickly to the console to look at it, and he reads the message. And it is the message, and we see the whole message, and it talks about a Canarian male, dark features, all this other shit. And you kind of just see Tim's eyes kind of, they're kind of looking around like, And then, of course, I instantly knew what was happening, and I was pissed.
Well, I thought it was kind of cool too that they had the Star Wars language on the screen, and then it translated it to English. I was like, that's kind of nice.
That was really cool.
I was like, all right, that gets that out of the way, because I was wondering if they were actually going to do that, but then they did, and it was great. And meanwhile, this is going on. Cassian, we finally get to see him go to his house where he lives with his mom and B2 Emo, our favorite new droid. Star Wars and fun droids. It never gets old. And we find out that his mom's name is Marva. And she's like, what's going on with your face? And he explains that he fell and everything's fine. He's just going to wash up and go to bed. And she's like, just looking at him like, all right, you little shithead. Like, I know what's going on. And she tells B2 Emo to read out the message. And it's the message that Tim received. Hey, there's a Canary male on the loose. Everyone be on high alert. And she immediately is like, who knows you're from Kanara? We've always said Fest. Fest is where you're from. We've always said you were born on Fest. And he's like, whoa, everything's fine. And then she's like, I've been hiding you for years. Everything going on is Fest. And then she goes, was it Bix? And he's like, don't worry about Bix. Bix is nobody.
Yeah, and then she ends up yelling and says, who the hell told them about Canary? And then he kind of confesses and says, well, that was me. And B2 Emo says Bix has been calling him for the last couple hours. And so obviously he ignores Marva and is trying to figure out, where Bix is. Because he's like, oh, shit. Because it's about this buyer. And he's like, really, really, really needs this guy to show up so he can get this cash.
Yep.
And the whole time she's yelling at him and she's like, what the hell's going on? What did you do? And he ends up, he's really curt and he turns around and then ends up yelling at her. And she asks him, she's like, what did you do? And then he kind of just confesses and is like, this is what happens. I messed up. And they cut, but obviously he tells her the story of what the hell happened.
Exactly. He leaves and makes his way to Bix. And Bix is even like, what did you do? What's happening? She found out the information and he's like, listen, it's not my fault. He just needs enough money to get off world. He just needs... He needs her buyer to show up so he can get his money, sell the part that he has, and to get away. And she's like, hey, he'll be here in the morning. And he takes her hand and he's like, he thanks her. He's like, yeah, I won't forget this. And just as he does that, fucking Tim, the shithead with 2 M's in his name, shows up and sees them holding hands. And he instantly is like, oh, there. She's cheating on me with this guy.
There's my reason to be a dick.
Yeah, so then he immediately goes to a transport kiosk and sends a message.
And as soon as that happens, we cut, and we're back at that command center area where those people were kind of talking about the planet earlier in episode 1, where Karn was screaming and yelling. And they are looking at Tim's message. They are receiving it right then and there, and you're watching him send the message. And they have a lead now on Cassian. And they have his name, they have everything, and they have an image of him. It's a couple years old, and he definitely looks younger than what he looks like now. But Karn walks in, and they're like, oh, we got him. We have a photo. And he looks at it, and he just stares at it. Now, I don't know if they have history. I don't know if they've ever met. I don't know any of that. But there's something there. Karn just, I don't know. I think Karn probably just views this photo with detest.
I think he sees this as his opportunity. If he can catch this brutal killer and bring him to justice, then that will lead him to, higher position.
Yep.
Which I said this in the first episode. I think that he is someone who desires to be in Imperial service and just didn't make the cut for whatever reason.
Yep.
And I think he's seeing this as his ticket to the big time. Yeah. The big leagues. Yep. aka an ensign on some Imperial Star Destroyer.
Yeah, pretty much. And so then the woman who was there at the brothel in episode 1, she walks out, the hostess that spoke with Cassian. She walks out of another room with another guard. And Karn just kind of turns and looks at her. Basically, they're going to use her to say, like, hey, can you verify this is the dude? That's pretty much what we're going to see. And Bix, we all then cut, and Bix now is at Tim's. And she's a little tipsy, and she's like, hey, man, is it too late to hang out? Like, fuck tomorrow. Let's hang out today. And they end up wrestling.
Star Wars has established sex as canon.
I mean, how else are people gonna?
There's all the jokes I kept seeing online. It was so funny. Everyone's like, Star Wars sex as canon. I'm like, literally, Luke and Leia, we see them get bored, you fools.
I know. It's stupid.
Back at headquarters, we see Karn meets a Sergeant Moss.
I think it's Moss. Is it Moss?
Is it Moss? I think it's Moss. Well, we're going to call him Moss. And we're going to call him... Actually, I'll call him Sarge. This dude is like... Karn's like looking in a mirror. This dude is like, absolutely, sir. We are military men. We are doing our duty. Like, 2 of our comrades in arms died. And Karn's like, finally, somebody gets me. Absolutely. Somebody's finally speaking the same language as me. And Karn's like, all right, how many men do you think we'll need? He's like, 12 to 14. And he's like, and I assume you're going to join me, sir. And he's like, yes, of course. And the sergeant is just like, hats off to you, man. Like, you're doing great. You're finally taking action. Like, this guy's, it's so funny. Karn's like, where have you been all my life? Like, you're beautiful.
He's giving him this validation he so much craves.
Yep. And it's funny because, like, this guy, like, he keeps going, like, he's like, oh, thank God that you and the chief inspector absolutely, we need to deal with this. And the Karn's like, yes, the chief inspector is involved in this. Absolutely. And it's so funny to see him being like the fact that he's disobeying. Honestly, I think that if he found out that he was disobeying orders from the chief, I think this Sarge guy would be like, oh, well, then why the fuck are we doing this? Like, we've been given an order to stand down. We should stand down. That's how by the book this guy is.
Yeah. So we do a quick cut to B2 Emo and Marva, who we saw earlier, and they are clearly concerned. They're kind of walking around the house, and they're not happy. They're really worried about what's going to happen. And then we cut to Cassian, and he's at that ship that we saw earlier that he slept in episode 1. And he's going through the ship, and he grabs this device or whatever that he's saving to sell. We kind of get a glimpse of it, but not really, not yet. We don't really see it too much, but he's stashing it in his bag. And then he grabs a small rifle. Now, clearly, he stares at it. Clearly, he's nervous. Clearly, he's scared. He doesn't seem the calm and cool collective Cassian that he is in episode 1 when he's like, shooting the shit with people, or when even people are hassling him, he's able to like kind of get out of it. This is something where I think he clearly realizes this is not going to be something he's going to be able to get out of by like just talking his way out of it, or just like being himself almost, if that makes sense. Like just his personality is not going to get him out of this situation.
I think he's feeling the noose tightening. I think he knows that he's on a timetable to get away, and I think it's slowly dawning on him. He's like, oh, I'm running out of time. I've got to get all this stuff done, and there's not enough time in the day to get it all.
Yeah, and what's cool is the way the shot goes is they show him looking at his weapon and then looking like really super nervous and worried and scared, and then all of a sudden it cuts to a younger version of him doing the same thing.
Yep. Doing the exact same thing. They're looking at the crashed ship, and they're noticing like people laying in the ruins of the ship, just laying outside. And they then form like a weird like battle line. They're like, all right, you guys go that way, I'll go this way. And the leader, she crawls down to like move in the middle of it. It's kind of cool. She kind of makes herself a sacrifice almost. Like she's like, all right, I'm gonna go in the middle. You guys cover me from the ridge line.
It's pretty cool. It's like actual like interesting hunting
tactics.
Tactic. Like they're hunting tactics. It's pretty cool. And we see like this weird golden gas that keeps coming from the ship too. Like it's weird. It's like the whole ship is not on fire or anything. There's just all this like gold gas mist that's popping off. Okay, so now we cut to a very fancy ship, and I mean fancy ship. This is a really cool looking ship. It's being driven by Stellan Skarsgård's character, Luthen Rael. And his character drives this ship onto Ferrix, And we see him making his way to the transport ships that are taking him to town. He asks his ship, how far do I have to park? You know, what do I got to do? And he gets on this ship, and now it's the next morning. And it's Hammer Guy again. He's at it again. He's boom, 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 and everybody's waking up. And Tim has been up all night. Tim's been sitting in the corner. He's just sitting there. And Bix wakes up and is like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, oh, nothing. And she's like, do you have the Star Wars equivalent to coffee, basically? And and it was, what is it called? It was called like
it's called Caf.
Caf. Yeah, you got some caffeine, like pretty much. Like, it was great. I thought it was funny.
It's called Caf in Legends as well, which I was like, hey, there we go. Something else made it through. Caf and refreshers.
You got that Star Wars Caf, baby. It's like I felt like it was like a beatnik. Yo, man, you got that Caf.
We are one step away from getting hot chocolate. I can feel it in my bones. We're going to get hot chocolate. The most despised Legends drink item ever. I just want Luke Skywalker to order a hot chocolate, and everything will be complete.
That's great.
Read Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire if you don't know what I'm talking about.
So he says, okay, yeah, I got some coffee, whatever. Here you go. And Caf. And she looks at him and she's like, hey, what's wrong? And he gives her the same exact answer that she gave him. He's just like, oh, nothing, just tired. And the best hiding secret excuse, I guess, in this whole Star Wars world. So Bix then says she's got some errands to run. She's going to kind of leave and go do some stuff. And she asks, can you set up the shop? And he's like, yeah, sure, I could set up the shop. And she's like, okay. And then she like kind of just goes to get ready. And we like see him just sitting there like staring, like
he feels a little guilty.
I think he feels guilty, but I think he's a little nervous too, or worried maybe.
Yeah. I think he's worried. Honestly, I think he's worried she's going to find out. Not that he did it. I think he's just worried that she's going to find out that he did it.
I agree.
So we cut back to Cassian. He's collecting his gear, and B2 Emo is complaining, asking him to stay. Stop, don't gather your stuff up, stay, please. Which, you get the feeling that they've been together for a while. We find out a little later how long they've been together, but I think it's kind of cool him just being like, hey man, don't it's like a sad, just, hey, don't leave. What are you doing? Stop. And while he's doing this, Marva is actually at the house and she's looking through Cassian's stuff and she finds the staff that he was holding when he was a kid. We then cut to the children with their staffs getting closer to the ship. They're looking at the bodies. They're all weird. They're like all yellow. They're wearing like broken gas masks. And interesting enough, they're also wearing jumpsuits that have the CIS logo on them.
Hey.
Interesting. So one of the bodies actually falls out, and when this happens, the leader, she's like, oh my God, what's going on? One of the other guys actually gets up and shoots her from behind. And then all the kids, turns out those are not staffs, but actually giant blow dart guns. And they just, they shoot the guy with darts, and this dude gets lit up by these kids.
It's badass.
And they all, that guy drops, and so they all run up to their leader, and she's clearly dead. So they grab her and they carry her back, and then Cassian's by himself, and he just looks back at the ship like, hey, I'm going to keep going.
He has a fist, too. He's pissed. So then we cut to an older Cassian, and he's trying to gain a discreet ship to take off-world to Tassa. And the guy, he goes up to this, booth, and the guy there is hanging out with another alien, and they're talking and stuff, and they're talking about Kenari. And the man says, hey, you ever hear about Kenari? You know anybody from Kenari? And Cassian's like, huh, what? No. I don't know what you're talking
What's
about.
A Kenari? Is that something you drink?
Yeah, what's that? What drink is that? I don't know. He basically plays dead. Dead? Plays dumb. He plays dumb. Well, he might as well be dead because now they're all looking for him. And so he haggles with this guy, and at the end of it, he needs 700 credits to get him out immediately and discreetly, because that's the whole thing. He doesn't want anybody to follow him. He doesn't want anybody to know he's leaving. So he tells this guy, be ready in an hour. He's got, I think, what did he say? He says 500 credits, and so he needs a little bit more. So he's like, all right, this guy's showing up to buy this thing. I got an hour.
I'll sell it.
Yeah.
I'll leave.
Be there. Be ready in an hour. Keep the engines running. And the guy's like, all right, fine. Okay, cool. And the alien keeps going on about Kenari. And the guy's finally like, dude, shut up. Leave it alone.
Yep. It's so great.
It's good.
Meanwhile, in hyperspace, Karn and his assault team are getting ready. The sergeant's giving this great big speech, hey, this guy's armed and dangerous. We got this. And then he's like, all right, and now we're going to have our leader. give us an inspiring speech. And Karn is just not good at it. It's so great.
Cringe.
Which again, I think that's which it shows, I think, the separation between him and an Imperial officer. Because an Imperial officer would totally have nailed that speech. And he's over here like, all right, guys, let's get him.
For justice?
Right, for justice.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And like,
and then the sergeant's even like, all right, everybody clap. Like, Jeb Bush, please clap. Please clap.
Please clap. But like, what was cool too is one of the guys like falls asleep. He's like, oh God. Oh. Like you could tell even Karn is uncomfortable. Like the whole thing was just like cringe central.
Exactly.
And after this weird ass speech, Luthen is now on a transport. And he's on a transport with an elderly man who I don't know where this guy looked familiar from, but he looked very familiar from probably like another movie or TV show or something. But this guy's chatting him up. And at first, he does not seem very interested in entertaining this man. He's just like, please leave me alone. But then he's like, all right, fine, whatever. What's up? And they talk about how the planet's changed in the last couple of decades, since the Empire, since the Corpse and all that. The last couple of decades has kind of reshaped this planet. And it's pretty interesting to hear like an older generation's side of where they were, where they are now, how things have changed. Like, this transport wasn't a thing and all this. And so clearly this planet has changed since the last like 10 to 20 years. And then all of a sudden it cuts to Cassian at a shipyard where people are taking apart to what seems to be Republic ships. So, hey, there you go. Probably Cal Kestis' little nod there or something like that. But it ends with him walking through the shipyard with his head down, but also kind of with a purpose.
All right. Now that we've talked about the episode, we're going to do a quick break, get our ads in there, and then we're going to jump into our reactions for the episode. So stick around. Okay. Now that we're back, we got all that out of the way. Let's get into our synopsis and our feelings on it. Kevin, why don't you start us off?
Well, I felt this episode was definitely much faster than the last one. It was a little bit shorter, I think, by a couple minutes. I thought we had a really good introduction of a few new characters, as well as, seeing more of the everyday life of the people on the planet, which I really liked. I liked that immersion. I love Hammer Guy all the way. Love him, love him. I thought the jealousy with Tim was kind of hilarious. Like, leave it up to some guy who just doesn't think he's good enough to try and get rid of the dude who has literally no interest in that person.
No interest.
He has no interest in her, and this guy is like, oh, God, you like my girlfriend. Like, no, bro. Like, he does not care.
He doesn't care. He's got his own problems.
Definitely. I really liked meeting Marva. She was cool, and I'm definitely looking forward to learning more about how she is relevant to Cassian's past, why she's hiding him, how she met him, all that stuff.
Yep.
And then seeing a child die, like, for no reason is pretty fucking dark for Star Wars. I don't think we've ever seen a child get murdered like that in Star Wars. And by that, I mean, like...
That's not true.
Oh, wait, hold on. By that, I mean...
Go ahead. That
guy just straight up shot a kid, and the kid died, and that's not something that we normally see. We don't normally see, like, a kid. Like they were still, like, maybe 14. We didn't...
I hear you, but I raise you Darth Vader in episode 3 of Kenobi.
But we didn't see that.
He murders that kid for no reason, and it's fucking gory.
We didn't see it. It's just implied, like, yeah, he killed younglings. Yeah, but, like...
No. I'm talking about in the village. When Vader strolls into that village, murders the dad, the kid comes out to like, oh, Dad, are you okay? And then he kills that kid too.
You're right. But what I meant was like, I don't know. I feel like that was not senseless killing. That was to create fear. This was just like the guy woke up and shot the kid. Like, it wasn't like, do you know what I mean? There was like no purpose to it.
I mean, I think, you wake up on a strange planet after a crash and there's someone with a stick poking at your buddy, you'd shoot him.
I don't know. I felt like that was one of my biggest gripes for the episode, where I was like, why did you kill her? What's the point? Where does it serve the purpose of her dying? Like, she didn't attack you. She just turned, and he just shot her like almost in the back, kind of. But I digress. That was like the weirdest thing for me. I think Karn is an absolute joke. Like, he's the kind of kid who, like, when you were in class and, the bell's about to ring, he would be the kid who asked the teacher, like, hey, is there homework? Like, do we have homework? Like, that would be him. But other than that, I really didn't have any complaints for the episode. I mean, I felt like I felt like it was filler, but still grabbed your attention, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know that makes sense to me. I would say that same thing is that the episode was set up. It's putting the pieces in place for the third episode. But I really do want to talk about the uniforms that those guys were wearing in the flashback sequence, because they are CIS uniforms. Those are CIS symbols on him. And that's weird because in the canon that was established for the Rogue One movie, Cassian was a CIS rebel.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on there? That's something that I think we're going to hopefully get into in later episodes. Yep. But, because the setup, he even says, like, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. Like, that's the line that always stuck in my head in Rogue One. So I'm wondering if that still rings true.
Yeah.
But like, because I don't know if he doesn't look like he's 6 years old to me in those flashbacks.
No, I thought he was more like 10.
I thought 10, yeah. So I don't know. So we'll see. Maybe we'll find out that the Republic bombed Kenari or something.
Yeah.
That maybe that's why all the people, all the men, like maybe they were building, they were mining ore to build battle droids.
Ooh, nice.
And that's why they were, and then, like, so like all the men were like, men and all the adults were like taken off the planet, and these guys are just like what was left, like that was hiding in the woods.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. We'll find out. Hopefully.
Okay, so this episode had a lot more quotes that I picked out and stuff like that I thought really gave a really nice sense of theme and just kind of overall, they stood out. They were really cool quotes. The first one was from the sergeant who he's explaining what's going on, why. It's when he's telling Karn, like, oh, hey, man, like, I like what you're doing. But he says, pockets are fermenting out there, sir. And I think it's a great way of foreshadowing revolt. And describing how those in the Empire view the beginning of the Resistance. They've already started to view, like, this guy is not an Empire employee, he's not in the military, but he's in the security part that's a little bit below, it's a corporation, and who owns the corporations and the banks and all that stuff? The Empire. So, but this guy's saying, like, pockets are fermenting. Like, they already see, like, little pockets of people, and they see, when they say fermenting, they're like, yeah, it's like decay is starting within the Empire, and we see these little things. So it's not necessarily full rebellion, but we see that there are these pieces of shit like that are just out there. So I thought that was a really cool way of foreshadowing that, and also just kind of showcasing how they viewed it. The other quote I saw was, the best way to keep the blade sharp is to use it. That's another quote from him in the same sequence. And I thought that was really, really cool because it shows how these types of authority figures kind of just want violence in some way, at least to assert their authority. And
it justifies their existence.
Exactly. It shows that, like, you have a gun, so you should use it, which is obviously a terrible mindset to have. You should always think of how you should never want or should never need to use whatever weapon you have. So it just shows how those in power can just be straight up unstable, and they see the violence as a means of control, and like, I can be violent, so I should. Therefore, you will not be, a pocket of fermentation.
Well, and I also think too, this Sergeant Moss, he's got to prove himself.
Yeah,
and I think that's where Karn is as well. I think they're both like, they want to prove that they are worthy of being in Imperial service. Like, I think that they're the guys that they read about bad stuff happening, and they're like, well, I'm going to be the one to do something about it.
Exactly.
Not really understanding the context of what might be happening, which is interesting because I think the Chief Inspector, I think he actually understands what's going on in the galaxy. I think he's like, he's just like, I think these guys, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's how this works. Whereas these guys are like, nope, we must... you know what it is? It's Javert.
Mm-hmm.
This is Les Miserables in space. Is what this is.
Yeah.
This is. I will catch him. I will catch Jean Valjean. No matter what.
Yeah.
But no, you're barking up the wrong tree here. It doesn't really matter.
It's just all the context clues behind it are just not there. They don't see that.
Yes. No, exactly. They're blind.
Now, another quote from one of these guys, Karn, one of the things that Karn says in that super awkward freaking speech, he says, "There comes a time when the risk of doing nothing becomes the greatest risk of all." Like, he says it in like that pencil pushy, annoying voice with his like voice kind of cracking. Now, okay, I will say, while this quote is actually a great way of thinking, it doesn't really translate to his situation very well at all. Like, I get the whole point of being like, hey, man, you know, this mindset is a great way to have when, like, you know, an authority figure oversteps their bounds or does something wrong. But as the authority figure, as well as, you know, in this specific situation already, who has overstepped their bounds, it is already an overstepping rationalization. Like, he's already like, it doesn't process. The background context clues don't process for his situation. And he is just like, I can't let this go by. And it's like, hey, well, your guys were fucking assholes and they basically like did it to themselves, but they died. It's like, okay, cool. They died while trying to hurt somebody, but they died. It's like, holy shit, dude.
So it's interesting too, because Karn's coming from the idea of that because they were employees and members of the security force, then that means that they should, in his mind, they should be at a level that is above the petty things that the chief inspector definitely knows that they were doing.
Yep.
You know, just by the nature of them being, you know, these officers of the law, they should be always on the right side of that law. And I don't think that he understands that their people can be corrupt while also being in a position of power. I think in his mind, he's going, well, I would never do that. Therefore, these guys would also not do that. I believe I'm infallible. Therefore, everyone else who wears the same uniform as me is also infallible.
Well, that's the thing too, though. The authority figure can do no wrong. This is one of those people who see authority and authority figures as control is good, and these are the people to help other people. Control helps people, and like that's how this guy sees it. There is order. I must have order, therefore nothing can go wrong, and we need to follow the rules for order. That way, you know, chaos will reign if we do not. Like that's how this guy's mind works. Now, the other quote I have, there are two really good quotes. And it's the old dude at the end, the transport that the guy that he's talking to at the end. He says, "Who knows who you're talking to these days?" Which right away is probably the best sum up for the episode, because it shows not only how everything has changed since the Empire, but also how everyone so far has been hiding their own secrets. So far, everybody in this episode has been hiding secrets, right? You know, you got Tim hiding the secret of, I want to get Cassian out of the picture. You have Cassian hiding all God knows how many secrets. You have Bix, who's been hiding about this person that she knows that is, you know, supposed to be this contact. And then also you have Karn, who was told to hide this whole thing and has not. So I just thought it was really cool to like say, like, you know, who knows who you're talking to nowadays? Like, you don't know. Nobody knows who you are. You can be anonymous while also being, you know, just a secretive piece of shit. Like, everybody here has a secret to hold.
Yep. But I also think it's, you know, hey, we're playing Among Us. No, everyone is, who knows who's sus?
Yeah, literally. The whole thing is just sus. Everybody here is sus. And then, of course, the last quote, I just thought the quote was really cool. It was the last quote of the episode. It was, if you can't find it here, it's not worth finding. I just thought that was a really fun quote. I thought that was really cool.
That's a fun quote, yeah. All right, now that we're done with the quotes, let's get into our questions. Kevin, what questions do you have from this episode?
I think the having secrets thing is going to play a larger role in the series. So I'd like to see how every character that becomes part of his main group because eventually he will have a main group of people. We're going to have a main group of cast. I'm not saying that it's going to be these people in the beginning, but we will have like a main group of people. And I'm very curious. I'd like to see how all these characters become part of that group. And how, like, you know, the main group hides things from each other and how that's going to impact the adventure and just all those people. So I'm really curious. I want to know how all this stuff comes together. And then I said it in the last episode, but I kind of feel like, again, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, like where they are, like it just don't ask about the past, right? So in Edge Runners, spoiler alert for that, they have this thing where they're like, you know, their group, they go, don't talk about the past. I'm not going to ask you where you come from or any of that stuff. Just do the job, you know? So like, I kind of felt like that, you know, like what like don't ask questions kind of thing about the past. So I'm also kind of curious about how that's going to, you know, tie into everything, because that's the thing is Cassian's been hiding his entire past. And so that's how I felt. Like, does anybody care about it? Are they I want to know if anybody's going to care about him, the person, like where he's been from, or is it just going to be like, you know, can you get the job done? That's all I care about.
I'm thinking it's probably gonna be more the latter, to be honest.
So then also, I'm also curious about Karn's past. Like, I definitely want to know why he is the way he is. Will this lead to him being part of the Empire, you know, in a larger way or whatever? That's kind of how I started viewing it. Like, you have these two guys, Cassian and Karn, and I kind of think like they're gonna be butting heads a lot. At least I hope so, because I do think it would be a really cool dynamic. So I'd like to know if they're going to do that. And then I kind of want to just know more about Karn's past, because we've seen all this stuff with Cassian for a little bit. I kind of want to know about this guy. Like, can you humanize this guy and make me feel more with him?
Interesting.
I don't know. Like, I want to humanize, whatever. I want to know, should I care about this villain? Do you know what I mean? Like, should I care about...
I'm telling you right now, this is going to be Les Miserables in space. I think it's going to be Javert hunting down space Jean Valjean. That's really what it is. Because these characters are too perfect in that way. They're the exact same mindsets. I think my biggest question is still, what's up with the CIS? I'm excited to see what's going on with that.
Yeah. I know the CIS thing is like a big deal for you, so...
It is. It's larger canon is where I get the most excited about. So... we'll see where that leads. Final thoughts, Kevin?
Yeah, overall, I think the episode, it did feel like filler, at least for me. But like you said, setup. I think that's a good way to say it too. But I think it had enough meat, you know, like I think it had enough meat in the story to keep going. And when I say filler, I mean like immersive scenes too, like Hammer Guy, right? And other people closing shops, etc. I enjoyed that though. So like that's my thing. Like when I say filler, I mean like seeing more of the everyday aspect of what's going on. Like, you know, trying to immerse the audience in the feeling of what it's like to be there, like actually be there. And I think there is a luxury to that being a TV show where we don't get that same luxury in a film. You can draw these things out and make those scenes actually
This is the most fleshed out Star Wars world we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
We know more about this world than we... Like, the only world I think we know more about is Tatooine, but that's only because we've been there like 30 goddamn times. Like, we've been there so much, we know how it works. But, like, we really don't know, like, how Bespin works or, you know, even Mustafar. It's like, we haven't been there enough. But this planet, I'm like, nope, I know exactly what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's great. Yeah. I think for me, this episode is not a filler episode. It's a setup episode. I think all the pieces are now in place to start the journey that we are looking for. I think this was a necessary setup episode. And I'm really excited to see where it goes in episode 3.
I'm curious. How do you feel about the dynamic of Karn and Cassian? I'm just very curious about what you think about that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say it again. It's great. This is Jean Valjean versus Javert. This is going to be... I think that Cassian is going to get drawn into a larger stage. I think he's going to get brought into run-ins with the Empire itself. But I think, like, during all of that, I think that there's going to be this inspector on his tail, chasing him no matter what. And I bet you there's even a moment where Andor reveals to him, like, hey, the Empire is fucked. And he's going to be like, I don't care. You murdered 2 employees of my corporation.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be, I don't think Karn's going to make it through this series. I'm going to say that just going to say that right now. I don't think he's going to make it.
Really?
But I think there will be an interesting, I wonder if there'll be an interesting like reveal with him where, he learns the errors of the Empire and like sees that he's just a cog in the machine. I mean, how interesting would it be if like they get to a point where like he captures Andor, like he's got him held prisoner and he's going to turn him into the Empire. And then an Imperial like officer or Moff like walks down a gangplank and he's like, "Sir, I caught this rebel for you." And then the guy just kills him, just blows Karn away.
Yeah, that would
like if
okay,
like you're standing in my way. Just get the hell out of my way. Miss Cassian Andor. Finally, I've caught you at last. Like that would be like, it would be such an interesting end to his character. You are so below my level of notice that this criminal is more important at this time than you.
Yeah. I definitely think this episode had a lot of like the whole authority figure thing and, them being just very assertive with their power. I think this was a lot about power.
Absolutely.
This whole episode was a lot about power and how Cassian doesn't really have any.
Yeah. He's at the bottom. He's at the start of his game, bottom of the ladder. And with that, we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at lore_party. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.